So now we are going to do today is an introduction to project management. An introduction to project management. And when you hear the word project, I don't want those of us that are not in the construction industry to feel as if we will not be part of the class, or it's not relevant for us. We're going to see shortly that it's relevant to us. So we are going to learn understanding project management baselines, and we'll see why most projects fail, right? So, of course, we know my name already. So, I'll skip all of these. This is just an outline. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be giving you today's slide. You will get the slide, and then maybe tomorrow or maximum Sunday, you are going to get the videos of day 1 and day 2, so that you can go through it before, our next class. So as a way of introduction, let me just say a bit of things, right? There is this observation that I have made, that in most cases, you don't get all information about a project or a work you want to do before you commence the work. Sometimes even all the resources may not be at your disposal. Now, if it's not at your disposal and the real information is hidden or unavailable at the time you are commencing a work, it is a good reason why you need the project management knowledge. You need the project management knowledge. What do you do when things begin to change after you have commenced a work? Like I said, it can be anything. It doesn't have to be construction. So that's a personal experience, and I think everybody needs a fair knowledge, even to manage your life and manage your home. You need a fair knowledge of project management, so that when things change, you are not caught off guard. That's one reason why I am doing this. Then number 2, basic knowledge just puts everyone, on the same page. The reason is because when you have a work to do, most times you cannot do it alone. If you can get a work done alone, it's probably not a very serious endeavor. Every serious endeavor will require you handling, resources, managing people, or working with people. Now, if you do not have basic project management knowledge, you may not know how to put everybody on the same page. I expect us that if we learn some of these things, like Mr. Obong said, he's representing his organization, I expect that he will go and step down some of this knowledge to his team. Because when I started, managing projects, I used to have a lot of crises with people on site. I began to wonder, can't you just know that this is how we should do this thing? But later I started knowing, if they don't know, they don't know. So I started volunteering. Let me step down knowledge. Let me see why I know. So before I start any project, I get everybody on my team. Let's come together. Let's agree. How are we moving on this? This is the goal. This is the target. Let's all be on the same page. So once you have this knowledge, it helps you put your team, and every one of you will be on the same page. Now, every project manager, whether you are actively on a project or not, you need the knowledge to be able to manage your resources. Resources are what drives project. Resources, whether it's human resources, money, material, if you do not know how to manage them, you can, you can have them wasted, right? Then, of course, we need to be able to reduce disagreements and crises on our projects. Disagreement and crisis on our projects. So it's another reason. Now, what is a project? What is a project? What is a project? Now, some of us here have said you are okay. Somebody say hairstylist, somebody say marketer, somebody sells waterproofing, material. Somebody is even a filmmaker. So the question is, what's your business with project? What's your business with project? So I'm going to give a simple and straightforward definition to project. Then I will just explain, a little bit, right? Now, A project, right, is any endeavor that is temporary that you undertake or to create a unique product, a service, a result, or meet an objective. Now, let me say it again. I didn't say it's a construction work or a building or a house or a shopping mall. I say any endeavor. When I say any endeavor, I mean any endeavor, any work you have to do that is going to create a product, service. I'm going to define those things you see me putting in bold there. I'm going to define them a little bit in a short while, right? The word temporary, the fact that it's unique, and the fact that it's what? It has an objective. We're going to see it very, very soon. The fact that it's temporary, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by it is unique? And what do I mean by what? By objective. We're going to see it, shortly. Now, let's look at each of those things are put in bold there. I call them the attributes of a project. Now, when I say attributes of a project, what do I mean? It means, what do you see before you will know that what work I am doing now is a project? Not all works are projects. But when you see anything, any endeavor with the following attribute, the attributes I'm going to be explaining now, when you see anything that has those attributes, then you can apply the project management principles you will learn from these sessions on that particular work. So I'm going to be using the word project, work, and endeavor. I'm going to be using it interchangeably because really, any work and endeavor can be a project once it has attributes like, number one, it must be temporary. Number one, it must be temporary. Now, temporary doesn't mean it will go extinct. Temporary doesn't mean it will die. Temporary doesn't mean it's going to be demolished or taken away someday. No. Temporary nature of a project means that that particular work has a start date, it has an end date, and it's not something that is ongoing like an operation that never ends. Can I confirm if somebody can hear me loud and clear?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you very much.
I can hear you loud and clear.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Good. If you are doing anything that has a start date and an end date, then you must apply project management principle. The reason is because it cannot go on and on and on. The fact that there is a start and an end means it is now a project, and you must be able to start at when you want to start and end when you want to end. How do you ensure you do that? It is what this session is going to be about. So the number one attribute, feature, that you must see before you classify it as a project is that it is temporary. Madam Al-Eri wants to make hair for 5 persons in 8 hours. For example, she's got a project on her hand. If she's starting at 8 a.m. and she says, I want to close at 5 p.m., she needs project management knowledge to be able to ensure that she starts at 8 a.m. and ends at 5 p.m. So at that instant, because she has boxed herself in and said there is a start and an end, hair making at that moment becomes a project. Madam Al-Eri. Brother Josh wants to shoot a movie, and he wants to start it on October 1 and ensure that the movie enters the market December 15. Mr. Josh has got a project on his hand because it's got the temporary attribute. It must start and it must end. It cannot just start shooting and it doesn't have an end date. If you don't have an end date, it's crisis. You are bound for crisis. I'm going to be giving a lot of, practical examples. So let's just follow me and I'll talk about this, very shortly. Number 2 attributes for you to classify any work you are doing as a project is that it's got to be unique. It's got to be unique. Unique doesn't mean it's coming out of this world. No. Unique simply means this particular thing has a specific objective to deliver. It has a scope. Scope is just the extent to which your work is, and you know it. It has an outcome. Then it has distinct, features, right? It can be a product, it can be a service, it can be a strategic objective. But the fact that you can identify something that once, for example, I just gave example of Josh's film. It starts on October 1 and ends on December 15. What this means that at December 15, what should we see to say that this thing has ended? Those are the unique features of your project. After 8 hours, what must Al-Eri see to say that I am done making the air successfully? What are those things you must see? So it's not when you are there. It is before October 1 that Josh needs to sit down and write the features of what he wants to achieve, because that becomes the baseline, against which you measure performance and you measure success. If you are in the building or industry, of course, if you say, okay, the scope of this work is that I will start this project, and after 3 months, the house is roofed, for example. You can face project work. You can actually face it. I say phase 1, this must be achieved. Phase 2 starts and ends this time. This must be achieved. So as a project manager, you must list your objective and agree with your clients. Now, I've had crisis, I've had arguments with clients who will say, no, this was not what I was expecting. This was what I was expecting. Before the start date, we will write it down and document it. At the end of 2 weeks or 8 weeks, depending on the duration, what are we going to see to conclude that the work has ended? You pen it down. It makes your project work. That's unique nature. Of course, another attribute of a project is that it must have planned set of activities. Now, there is no work that is going to be done if you do not want to be confused. You need to ensure that your activities are planned. If you do not want to run into crisis, you must list activities. As a matter of fact, it is activities that build up to get your work done. If you start a work and you do not have your activities built up, it is probably not a work that you are serious about fulfilling. Now, can we see the board, right? Can we see the board? Can I need somebody to confirm that he or she can see the board?
Yes, sir.
I
Clearly.
can't.
Okay, great.
Yes, we can.
Great. Now, if you are doing something small, right?
Yeah, I know they see am. I can't see it.
Okay. Who say him no dey see am?
It's Alheri. I can't see it.
You can't see it.
Yes, it's not displaying on my phone.
It's not displaying.
Yes.
You are sure it's not your device?
No. It was displaying initially until you asked, and I can't see it.
Because everyone else can see. Can you still see, please? Can you see the board? Look, I'm not meaning my slide. I mean the whiteboard I'm pointing at.
That's the thing. I can't see the whiteboard. I can only see the host's picture.
Oh, that's serious. Can any other person confirm that I can see the board?
We can see you on the board.
Okay. Al-Eri, you may need to maybe log out and log in again, please. Sorry
Okay,
about
I'll
that.
do just that.
Yes.
All right.
Or she might just need to scroll to the left or right. She's probably on another page on the
Okay,
Zoom.
great. So just try that, and Al-Eri, scroll to the left or right
Right.
and back. If not, you go out and come in again.
All right, I'll do that.
All right. Now, why I want to just illustrate this is this, right? If you have a small work to do, you are likely not to miss the tiny bits. Small work, like, for example, the work, let me see, maybe you just want to paint your room. You just want to paint your room and you have the paint on ground. The next thing is probably to, for example, let's say the work you have to do. Like I told you, I'm using the word work and endeavor just to break it down a bit, because project looks like a very, very big word or big thing when we hear the word project. Now, maybe the project you have now or the work you have to do is to paint your room. If you are painting your room, right? If you are painting your room, all you probably need to do is to arrange to, move your things out, is to maybe say, okay, clean wall. And then you just maybe go ahead and paint, right? This is a small work, right? But when you have a work that is a bit complex or large in nature, you will need to break the work down into set of activities. So if one of the attributes of project is that the project must be able to have set of activities. If you cannot think of set of activities for your work, it's probably not a project. If you have a house to build, for example. Okay, let me not use house. Let me use Mr. George's career. He wants to produce a movie. Now, because it is not my area of specialty, I may not be able to put the activities down properly. But we're going to see later some of the attributes of a project manager. He must have technical knowledge of the area of work he's embarking on. So great. Okay, great. Al-Ari, I'm seeing you connecting back. So just quickly confirm to me that you can see the board now.
I can see the board now.
Okay, great. Thank you and welcome back in.
Thank you.
All right. So if it's a large project like producing a movie, he may need to tell himself that I will need to probably, I'm not a professional in this field, but you need to maybe select location, for example. You will need to maybe buy or hire equipment, for example. You will need to maybe a whole lot of other activities, right? So he needs to list, and then selection of location, he may need to have other sub-activities. I'm going to be teaching us all of this tomorrow, how to break it to sub-activities. So what this attribute of project is saying is, and that endeavor or that temporary work you need to do should have set of activities. Once you are able to get set of activities for your work, then you have a project in front of you. So you must have a planned set of activities, series of tasks that you have to achieve, a defined objective, what you are set out to achieve, what are the tasks that you need to engage in. Then number 4, attribute of a project, that it must have baselines. It must have baselines. Now, summary, baselines are just boundaries. Baselines are boundaries. Baselines are boundaries. Now, let me talk a little bit about boundaries, right? Now, if you do not give yourself a boundary, whatever you are doing, if you do not have a boundary, your work will develop life of its own and begin to run you instead of you running your project. So you must give your project boundary. There must be a boundary within which you manage your work. There must be a boundary. I'm using the word must because it's one mistake project managers make. No client should pressurize you into starting work without both of you agreeing on the boundaries of the project. It is very important. Those boundaries are called your baseline. Majorly, we have, we'll discuss it on a greater detail, but let me just mention, we have 3 major baselines that you must. There are other baselines. We'll look at it later, but or let me just mention 4 major baselines you must agree on with your client or your customer or yourself before you commence the work, before you mobilize to site, or you mobilize to field, or you mobilize to saloon, to start whatever you are doing. You must agree what the baselines are. You must agree the scope. You must agree the cost. You must agree the time or duration, right? Another word for time, duration. You must agree the cost is budget. I'm using the word, budget because sometimes it can change, right? We'll look at that tomorrow when budget changes. Then there's what we call quality. Quality, right? Quality baseline. So we have scope baseline. We have cost baseline. We have time baseline. And we have quality baseline. Now, this attribute of a project says, see this my arrow here. It means let me take time, for example. If you do not give yourself boundary or box yourself in, you are likely going to commence a project that may never end or that will end when it ends. Let me just put it that way. When a project is ending when it's ending, then it's just poor because there is time value of money. Those of us who introduce ourselves that we've done MBA, we understand what I'm saying, because there's time value of money. So if you give yourself baseline, this is what happens, right? If you give yourself a baseline, it means if Mr. Wesley is on a project site and he has told himself that I need to do foundation, I need to do superstructure. Sorry, I'm using abbreviations, but I believe you can, how do I say now? I believe you can remember. I'll share the video, so don't worry. He has to do his roofing. He has to do his finishes, right? And maybe some external work, right? So what Mr. Wesley is likely to do is to say, let's say he wants to do it in 3 months, for example, or 13 weeks. He can decide to allocate time and say 3 + 3, 6, and allocate. He may just allocate time. He can do randomly and just allocate time like this, right? Now, if he doesn't give himself boundary, this foundation can go to 8 weeks. Now, let me tell you something interesting I've learned on all my project sites. Any project you do not give boundary, you will drag so much on it and it will eat up your budget. That's number one I've discovered. Then number two, any project that you do not give a boundary to, especially time boundary, will eat up into other works that you need to do. Now, any project you don't give a boundary, you will always have reason to change things and to adjust things. For example, if he knows that his foundation is 3 weeks, if there is something that is affecting, I will teach us tomorrow how to break this down into sub. For example, he needs to dig, he needs to lay block, he needs to blind. So he needs to give himself all those realistic, boundaries to ensure that it meets up with the expectation of his project. So it's good you ensure that your base projects or your work has baselines or boundaries. Of course, I'll talk about cost, later on. I'll talk about scope. But let me talk a bit about quality. Quality is relative. Quality is simply the standard you agree with your clients, right? So you can't come and tell me that my work has low quality if that is what I have agreed with my clients. You can do a 3-bedroom flat for 6 million. Another person can do the same 3-bedroom flat for 15 million, depending on the level of finishing, right? So you need to state it so that your clients will not say, I thought that with that money, it is POP we're supposed to put when the cost does not cover POP. Or you not say, no, you're supposed to have use certain paints for me for my living room and bedroom and bathroom. when that was not what was quoted for. Those kind of a thing you need to, that's why I call it baseline. You need to define them. So your work must have baseline. If you don't have baseline, you are most likely going to overspend and run into crisis in your project. So that's another attribute of a project, baseline or boundaries. Can you see my slide again? Can you see my slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Now, you can use the chat box.
Yes.
Which of these is not a project? Which of these is not a project? Which of these is not a project? You can unmute yourself.
We are still taking a look at it. The screen is gone.
Okay, the screen is gone. All right, I am resharing now. Can you see the screen now?
Yeah. With my view, yeah, almost all are projects.
What?
Almost all are projects.
Okay, so you have not seen a non-project there.
Okay, I think B, C, and D, they look like non-projects because from the definition.
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I think
now.
B, C, and D, I'm not certain, but I think B, C, and D are not projects because from the definition, projects are supposed to have start dates and end dates, right? And it's not something that reoccurs or for just on ending. Like B now, you are giving him an email every last Friday. It's just going on and on. C is yearly, is organizing a yearly team building day. It's on and on. It doesn't have like a fixed start date and a fixed end date. And D2 is similar. But for like F, it's a birthday party. So it's only going to happen once and it's not going to be yearly. So that's like a project. A looks like a project. And E, yes, is like a project because it's supposed to end by the end of 2023 December. So that's my own opinion.
All right, great. I think let me not go for them. Mr. Obong, you've done a very good analysis. The first one, of course, it's got a budget, it's got a specific date, it's got an objective, right? 250 medical staff, the budget. So A is definitely a project. B, to send email for foreseeable future. That's an operation. I'm going to define an operation, very soon. That's an operation. It's not a project. C, organizing a yearly team building day. Organizing a yearly team building day. So that can be an operation and it can also be a project. So let me explain now. Organizing a yearly team building day, if it is the admin department that organizes it yearly, it's an operation, an ongoing thing. But if each year there will, for example, if you want to organize a building day, you can give to a particular staff to say you are in charge and responsible for organizing this thing. So what's the start date? When is the D-Day? When is the end date? So the person will plan the set of activities. So once he plans a set of activities to ensure that, okay, this and this and this and this should be done before the training, and the training must end at so time, it becomes a project. Periodic update of QuickBooks software, that's not a project, it's an operation. Yes, it's a project. Then a birthday party, I put that there intentionally. A birthday party is a project too. The reason is because you can set out to do a birthday party of 500,000 and end up spending 2 million without knowing. So can you see why you must give yourself a boundary? Once you give yourself a boundary of 500,000, you will now begin to look at the activities that fit into your budget, right? So it makes a project. Thank you so much, Mr. Obong, for
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, for that analysis. Okay, so let me quickly go to my next slide now. So what's project management? We've looked at projects, but what is project management? What is project management? Let me see. So I will look at project management, and then now, project management is simply the application of knowledge. So the first thing is this: you must have the knowledge of the work you want to do. If you're a film producer, you are into how do we call what, Mr. Obong? You say you do waterproofing materials, right? An application. I know you do application. I know you sell the product too. You must have, yes, you must have a fairly good knowledge. So in project management is not just like the word, joining the two words and say managing project. No. Project management is you have a knowledge, you have a skill, then you have a tools and techniques you will use. For example, on the last day, we're going to be doing MS project. That's going to be a powerful tool I'm going to be arming us with. So you will use combination of your knowledge, your skill, and the tools and techniques that you have mastered. If you combine these three things and apply them to project activities to meet your objective, you are managing a project. So that means even if I give you this project management knowledge today, you need to go and build knowledge in your field, build skill required, and master the tools for your work. Then, if you break your work into different activities, you can now apply your knowledge, skills, and tools to the activities to meet your objective. That project requirement there simply means the scope baseline. Let me put it that way. I didn't emphasize the scope baseline earlier on. Scope baseline is simply your project requirement. It means by the time this project is done, what are the tangible deliverables? What are we going to see? What are the outcomes? So project deliverables are simply defined as project outcomes. And then there are also what we call the project requirement. What is the requirement of this project? You must be able to use your knowledge, skill, tools, apply them to the activities of your project to make sure you meet project requirement. If you begin to do that, then that's simply project management. Is that clear? Does anybody have any questions so far? Let me know. You can drop in the chat box. You can chat with me in the chat box. I can see the chat box. Is this definition clear for now? Okay. Are we waiting for the first person that will speak?
You can just come again so that we can have a good knowledge of what project management means before we move ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm saying if you have a work to do, like I say, project can simply be any work or any endeavor that is temporary in nature and achieve something unique, right, within a particular baseline or particular boundary or a particular time and cost, right? That's a project. You have a work to do. Now, the work that you have to do, remember I said one of the attributes is that it has boundaries. If you want the work or the project to meet up with the boundaries you have set, you will need to manage that work by applying your knowledge of the work, your skills, and some tools and techniques like MS Project I'm going to be teaching us on the last day. You must need to apply your knowledge and these tools and techniques to the activities that you are going to be doing to get the work achieved. Now, project management is the application of your knowledge, your skill, your tools to project activities in order to meet project objectives. So when you do that, you are managing projects. So project management is simply the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities in order to meet project requirement. Now, who is a project manager? A project manager is a person assigned to lead the team that is responsible for achieving project objectives. Now, I was intentional about this leading the team because sometimes project managers, because they are project managers, they want to do everything by themselves. The fact that you do everything by yourself doesn't make you a good project manager. You are likely to run into crisis and trouble if you want to do everything yourself. So a project manager is someone who is assigned. Sometimes it may not be an organization like those of us who work for ourselves. You can be the one assigning yourself to be able to lead a team. So when I tell you that, okay, I've delivered over 1,800 houses in the last 12 years in Lagos and Abuja, it is not that me alone delivered it. I have a team of people I work with. I've worked with some of us, in this class. I'm working with a lot of people who are not in here. So I lead a team. I organize a team. Sometimes this team are as good as me. Sometimes they are below me. Sometimes it could be horizontal relationship. Sometimes the relationship can be vertical. But as long as you are leading a team to manage resources, to be able to achieve the objective of your work or your project, that person is a project manager at that particular time for that particular work. So a project manager will be the one to plan the work. A project manager organize the work. A project manager will direct the work. A project manager will control the work. Right? I'll take that again. You will plan, you will organize, you will direct, you will control. Now, controlling includes monitoring. You don't just set a work running and you put people to run and then you are not managing them. You are managing the activity, you are managing the people, you are managing the money. Now, let me stop sharing my slide and just explain this a bit. Plan, organize, direct, and control. Now, let me go to the board again, right? I told us earlier on, I said earlier on that project must a minute. I told us earlier on that the project, one of the aspects of project is that it has set of activities and it has baselines or boundaries. Now, let me take Mr. Guadia's example of Mr. Guadia's project. He wants to do this in 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 weeks. So that means his foundation has a boundary. It has when to start, it has when to end, right? Then this boundary here can also represent the cost. It has how much it must deploy at start, and it has how much it must not exceed at end. So when I end, how much am I supposed to have spent? So maybe I'm starting on week 1, I'm supposed to end in week 3. that is the time boundary. I'm starting with let's say 1 million, and I must end this phase of work at 4 million. That is a boundary, right? Now, when I say a project manager does not just plan and organize the work, but must also monitor and control the work, what I mean is, if at week 2, for example, at week 2, Mr. Wesley, for example, at week 2, Mr. Wesley is somewhere here, his work. You know, your work's supposed to be moving this way, supposed to be moving. And at week 2, when you are supposed to be here, Mr. Wesley is here, right? And then at this point, Mr. Wesley has spent, let me say, 3.1 million naira. It is only when Mr. Wesley did not just plan and organize and deploy people to do the work, but is also monitoring and controlling. That is the only time that Mr. Wesley will know that there is a problem. If, as a project manager, he just goes and is sleeping because work has started, after all, my foundation has started, my clients, we are going to deliver your foundation for you. And at the end of week 1, maybe when you are starting day 1 of week 2, you have spent 3.1 million, and your cost baseline for foundation is 4 million. And Mr. Wesley is probably going to have issue with his client already. So what Mr. Wesley is supposed to actually do is to check the activities of week 1. I'm going to teach us this on the last day. Mr. Wesley is supposed to check the activity of week 1 and say, if the total I'm supposed to do 4 million in week 1, if Mr. Wesley, for example, is 1.5, in week 2 is maybe 0.5. In week 3, let's say he spends the most, let's say 2 million. Let me just say 1.8 million, right? Then in week 4, he spends 0.2. If he's supposed to have spent 1.5 at the end of week 1 and 0.5 at the end of week 2, but at the end of week 1 he's already doing 3.5 million. It is only when, as a project manager, is actively monitoring and controlling that he can detect this kind of problem on time. I'm going to show us, the MS project will help us detect all these kind of errors. We'll do that on week 3. So that's why I say a project manager does not just plan, coordinate, organize, and deploy resources to the field and then go and sit down and be sipping coffee in his office. No. Whether he's on site monitoring and controlling, or he has a software at the back end he's using to track his work, Mr. Project Manager must take control of his work and make sure everything is within baseline. Is he doing work as at when due? What I said I will achieve in week 1, am I achieving it? The money I said I will spend at week 2, is that what I have spent, or have I spent more? If yes, why am I spending more, and all those kind of things? That's why I say that a project manager must be able to control his work. So let me share my screen again. Now, so the project manager, like I said, must be able to plan, organize, direct, and then control. That point of controlling is very important. If you don't control, you lose control of your work. So you must control the people, the money to achieve the specific objectives, right? Now, why do we need project management? I'll just run through this quickly. Now, project management is because of resource constraint. Most time and cost is likely to be overrun, and you can't afford things to go on ending. So because of that, you need this knowledge, right? Now, because we need a structured approach of project management, it helps you to predict and repeat your project success. Now, how do I explain this? Let me put this way, right? If you achieve a work and you don't know how you achieved it, you actually have a bigger problem, in front of you. If a project fails and you don't know why it failed, you are likely to fail again. So if you understand the framework of project management, it makes your work structured so that even if something does not come out well, you will know, you have documented evidences of why it didn't come out well, and you can avoid your mistakes next time. Then there is an observation I've made that in most cases, I've mentioned this earlier, that you don't have all the full information before you start work. So if you don't have a structured approach, you won't know how to track your work. I'll talk about this, in a later class, right? Then, of course, there is a goal that must be achieved. Things don't just happen. You don't just say, okay, I want to achieve this, and then you allow it to just happen by itself. It doesn't happen that way. People make things happen. So you need to have the knowledge of project management. Of course, this is very, very important. Sometimes when I say that you don't have knowledge of everything before you commence a work or a project, do you know that sometimes you can even have the knowledge of everything before you commence a work? But guess what? Changing business environments can affect your work. Things are changing around us. Now, I'm going to talk a bit about project environment a bit. You will see that we have micro environment and we have macro environment. For example, presently in Abuja, those of us that stay around Abuja, there is a macro environment that is going to be affecting the construction industry very, very, very soon. There are some of us who have projects already that we have faced that maybe we'll face it over 5 years, 10 years. But if the new minister of FCT, agrees with the Minister of Housing that they don't want to see any vacant land in specific locations in Abuja, if not, the CFO will be revoked. Automatically, it changes your plan as a project manager. So because of changing business environment, you must be able to know how to manage projects. Sometimes, project roadblocks can be resolved quickly when you have a structured approach to managing work. Now, by the way, let me define project management for us in another way. Project management is actually a structured approach to managing any work you have in your hand to do. If you have any project to manage, if you deploy a structured approach to managing it, you are managing projects, right? So I'll just talk about this last one because it's very, very important. I'll talk about this last one because it's important. Then I'll just allow us to read up the slides later by ourselves. Now, knowledge of project management allows for retrospective learning. Now, what do I mean by this, right? In project management, there is what we call issue log. Issue log is simply a document you open whenever you have any issue or challenge on a project or on any work you have to do. It is a good practice to go and pen it down. I say on so date, we encountered this challenge that we did not envisage. What was the cause? You identify it. What was the solution? How did you resolve that issue? You identify. We call it issue log. So every project manager, I want to advise us to always have an issue log. Issue log helps retrospective learning so that at the end of every project, there's what we call closeout meetings. When you are closing out your project and you are doing your closeout meeting, you can review with your team. We had X, Y, Z issues when we're managing this project. You know what it helps you to do? When you have a similar project next time, there's what we call kick-off meetings. When you are doing your kick-off meeting with the team, when you are putting a team together for any work, any project, you must do kick-off meeting with them. It doesn't matter the work. Do a kick-off meeting. When you are delivering what you want to deliver, it's a good practice to always do a close-out meeting. I want us to pen that down, please. There is no work you must start without assembling your team and having a kick-off meeting. It doesn't need to be long. It can just be 30 minutes. And it doesn't need to be a decision-making meeting. It can be a briefing for you to just open a summary document and say, for this project, this is how we are going to be doing. 1, 2, 3 is what we want to achieve. 1, 2, 3 is how we want to achieve it. And let them make input, right? A closeout meeting is, wow, we have done what we said we'll do. What was the challenges we had? What could we have done better? What didn't we do well? So during closeout meetings, you record what you didn't do well and the challenges you encountered and how you resolved it. If you were not able to write it down, the one you missed while the project was on, the other team members will remind you that, no, we had this challenge. This was how we solved it. We had the challenge. This was how we solved it. You close that document and keep. When you are about embarking on a similar project, go and dig up your issue log and the matters from your last closeout meeting on your kickoff meeting. It will help you to remember that, oh, when I did this project the last time, I had this issue. So therefore, this was how I resolved it. From the start, you are likely not to have that issue. That's why I say that it allows for retrospective learning. Now, before we do the project environment, right, let me quickly, okay, let me just go ahead with the project environment. I will show us that tomorrow. I had something I wanted to quickly show us. I will show us that tomorrow. So let's do the project environment. What is a project environment? Now, before I move into this, does anybody have any question or any gray area so far? If you're not getting it as fast as you wanted, don't worry. Before we finish this class, by tomorrow, you will have calmed down a bit. We will meditate on it a little bit. I'll try as much as possible to share my slides today, but I can't promise us the video today because if it's too large, I will need it, the
Audio, no audio.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Yeah, please, I want to refer back to something you talked about. Is it the kickstart meeting, right?
Yeah, kickoff meeting.
Kickoff meeting.
Kickoff meeting.
Meeting. Okay, kickoff meeting.
Yes.
Okay, kickoff meeting.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
There must be a kickoff and there must be a closeout. And the purpose of the closeout and kickoff, closeout, you close out, help you to review your issue log, and you let your team add to the issue log. What are the challenges and how did you resolve it? Then you pass the issue log. In every kickoff meeting, make sure you review the plan for that project and review the issue log of the previous project. You are going to see a lot of challenges you face, and it will give you an insight on how to resolve it in case you meet such challenges again. Any other question, please? You can use the chat box. Okay, let me move ahead. The project environment. Now, let me tell us something. Projects exist and operate in environments that may have an influence on them. Every project has an environment. Now, when I say environment, the environment doesn't mean your compound. Or maybe I'm doing my project in right now. My project right now, the project that I'm actively handling now is along Abuja Kefi Road. It's along Abuja Kefi Road. So when I say project environment, I'm not saying my project is in Abuja Kefi Road or is off Abuja Kefi Road. That's not the environment I am referring to. But every project has an environment, right? Now, project environment is simply all the things, both external and internal. Let me add it. I'm adding a little bit to the definition. Both external and internal. Anything that is external to your organization that will affect your organization or your project, right? It's an environment of your project. Now, so the environment can consist of any factor that affects your project, that have a bearing on your project, like the strengths of the organization can affect the project, the weakness, the internal power plays on your site or in your office, government policies. I just gave an example of the Minister of FCT. Some of us, you know it. You know him, Mr. Wike, the former governor of Rivers State. He's putting a lot of us around the Abuja environment on our toes. Now, the policies is reviewing now and setting for land development in Abuja is actually an environment to any project that is happening in Abuja now. So, simply put, anything that can affect your project is an environment of the project, whether it's internal to your environment or it's external to your environment. I'll share my slide. You can, take a more look at that later. So anything that can affect your environment is simply what? An environment of your project. Now, let me just let me share something a bit. Let me share another slide that will just help me buttress this point. Okay, so I want to share a slide now that will buttress this point a little bit. Okay, just a few minutes. I'm trying to share a slide. So can you confirm that you can see this slide? Can you see this slide? Can you see this? Can you see my slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Now,
Yes, we can. Yes, I can.
let me take from bullet point number 2. Project environment can be
Internal, external.
I know if you go again.
I need to mute everybody right now. Somebody is talking. Okay. So I am muting everybody. All right. Thank you for muting yourself. Now, project environment, it can be internal. Internal, for example, internal means internal project environments are, for example, if you are working in an environment where it's a matrix environment, for example, a matrix organization is we have weak matrix, strong matrix, right? A matrix organization is an organization where we have functional managers and we have project managers. So you can start a project and then, but as a project manager, you still need to report to maybe a general manager in the office, maybe the HR manager has a bit of control and all that. So by the time you have that kind of thing, it's an environment of project that you need to be familiar with. For example, if you need to pay workers, and for every payment you pay, you have to write a request to the office for an HR to approve, and HR will pass it to GM will pass it to this. It's an internal environment. It will affect the success of your project if you don't manage that environment well. So you need to know when to quickly put in your request. You need to know, what the HR likes and what he or she dislikes. If you play into their nets, they can frustrate your project. That's what I mean by internal environment. You have control over that one. As a matter of fact, you can actually have control, over it. So your artisans, your masons, your workers on your project site, those are your internal environment. You manage them, right? External environment sometimes are the ones that are external to your organization. For example, I want to maybe screen my wall and I engage Mr. Walter or Mr. Obong, for example, Shield. Now, they are external to the organization. So these are external project environment. Then we have the micro and we have the macro. Most internal and external project environments are actually micro. Micro because it is within my control as a project manager. I can control it, I can influence it, I can play around with it. If I play it well, it will not affect my project. If I play it wrongly, it will affect my project. That's micro. Macro, most times macro is out of your hand. The only way to get control of macro is to do proper risk analysis and proper risk management. Proper risk analysis and proper risk management. That's how you manage macro project environment. I just mentioned Wike's policies as the Minister of FCT. Maybe there are other policies that they are going to come up very soon, economic policies. Dollar rate can affect the way you buy things. All those are macro. It's not with you. You can finish planning your project and one government policy can just come bam and it changes everything. So most times, proper risk analysis is what helps you to overcome the macro project environment. Your aim here is to reduce its impact on your project to the barest minimum. Is to reduce the impact. So, but I'm just bringing it up because if you don't understand that all these things play, you can just be a project manager who is just planning things without considering all factors. So tomorrow we are going to be looking at estimation techniques. We discover that when you are estimating for cost, time, or anything you are estimating or giving yourself baseline, you need to put into consideration the internal, the external, the micro, and the macro. For example, you cannot, if you are developing during a rainy season, right? That's a macro environment you must consider when you are estimating your cost and your time. So you can't just, Mr. Wesley cannot just say, I'm doing my foundation in 3 weeks when it's rainy season, when he knows that he used the same 3 weeks to do it in dry season. There is an environment now that needs to tell you that, no, my estimate should give allowance for rainfall. Or maybe you just finished plastering and every day came and washed the plastering. So you may need to make allowances for that and putting it in your contingency reserve. I'm going to teach us tomorrow about contingency reserve and management reserve. So that's for another day. Then there's what we call strength, weakness. They are internal to the project environment. Opportunity and cost are external to the project environment. Now, let me say a little bit more about environment. Now, there's what we call enterprise environmental factors. I'm still elaborating on internal and external. So the governance structure, the resources, the kind of IT technology you use, those are internal factors. While the market space, the legal framework and all that, they are your, external. Then there's what we call the organizational process assets, your policies. For example, do you have HR policies? Do you have policies for trees? For example, if you remove 1 tree, put 4 back, all those kind of policies. Then the knowledge repositories of the organization, all these are environments that you need to consider when you are planning projects. That's why I'm bringing that up, right? Okay, so I think now let me just talk about stakeholder. Then I'll close this. I'll go back to my main slide. Can somebody confirm that you are hearing and following? I want to be sure my network is not.
Yes, I'm hearing and following.
Yes, I'm hearing and following, sir.
Okay, can you see the slide I'm showing right now? The slide says project stakeholders, right? Now, project stakeholders form a very big and major part of your project environment. Project stakeholders, they form a very major part of your project environment. Who is your stakeholder? A stakeholder is any individual, group, or anybody that can affect your projects, that can be affected by your project. They are stakeholders. For example, you are building, Mr. Wesley, you are building a 10-story building beside a 2-story, let me call it a school, for example, that school, if they perceive that your 10-story will affect them, they become a major stakeholder. Why I'm putting it is because if they discover that you are going to affect them, they can begin to give you issues, or they can even write that you can't do a 10-story building, especially if they know that you are not supposed to go more than 3-4-story building there. So if they perceive that it can affect them, they are a stakeholder. And why I'm bringing this up is, if you don't manage your stakeholders well, they can bring your project to a halt. Mr. Joshua said he's in the film making industry. If he does not manage his stakeholders well, they can frustrate him, blackmail him, or run him out of business. Why? Because most stakeholders have interests. And if you don't understand how to manage their interests, rather than becoming friends of your project, they will become adversaries of your project. Now, let me shock you. Even your own colleagues in the same office can become adversaries of your project if you don't manage them well. I just talk about managing your HR, managing your finance officers, your account officers, your head of accounts. If you don't manage him well as a stakeholder, it can frustrate your efforts on your project. Now, I just did some circles there. You can see a project manager with his project management team, with a sponsor. All these are stakeholders. So a project manager must manage this team, must manage the sponsor, the person releasing money for the project. You must manage him well. He's a stakeholder, right? Your contractors are stakeholders. The building authorities. In Abuja, we have what we call the FCDA. In Kano, I've worked in Kano, and we have a Kano State Environmental Protection, CASEPA. I don't know if they're still called CASEPA, right? In Nasarawa State, we have Nasarawa Urban Development Board. We have what we call the NAGES. We have the AGES, the land people. They are those authorities. If you don't manage them well, they can come and mark your building, or you bring the bulldozer to remove your building. You sure your family members are probably stakeholders. This training I'm doing now, it's a stakeholder. If my wife insists that today like this, I am not driving myself, you must drive me, let's go and see my mother, my in-law. And I don't manage it well. She's a major stakeholder. So I need to manage her well so that I am not frustrated. I must get the idea is get everybody to buy into what you are doing. Then your boundaries become realistic. What are boundaries? Baseline. If not, you end up spending more. You end up wasting time. So if you finish setting baselines for yourself and you don't understand the environment within which, including the stakeholders, you are going to be running that project, you are likely to run into trouble. So that's why I decided to bring that slide on project stakeholders on, so that it will help us. All right, quickly, let me go back to my main slide, right? So let me go to, sorry, I'm trying to get, trying to get my slides back. Please, what can you see on the screen?
The project environment.
Okay. Okay, I've talked about this, right?
Yes.
You can still, can you still see the project environment on your screen?
Yes, but it's not like on a slideshow. It's just the main PPTX, that PowerPoint. We're not seeing the slide. It's just the background where we see that slide.
Okay, so let me. So, is it in slideshow now? Can you see it in slideshow?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes,
sir. It's in slideshow now.
Okay,
but
good.
it's still on project environment. Okay, you are moving now.
Yes, great. So you can see the
Project
project
life.
life cycle now, right?
Now on
Yes.
project life cycle. Yes.
Okay, great. So project life cycle, like like we have the life cycle of a mosquito or life cycle of a butterfly. Project also have a life cycle. Now, what's the project life cycle? Number one, we have the we have 5 life cycles, right? The first one is the initiation phase. If every project needs to be initiated, what do you do when you are initiating a project? Initiating a project simply means you define the scope of the project, you get your business case right. I'm happy that most of us here say we have MBA, right? So you understand what is a business case. Is it business case simply means you ask yourself questions like, is it profitable? Does it align with the business objective of the organization? Does it align with the strategic objective of the organization? These are questions you ask yourself. Then you get authorization in this phase. Do not never mobilize to commence a project if you do not have authorization. Who gives authorization? The sponsor or the client. Sometimes the client can be the sponsor. Sometimes the client may not be the sponsor. You understand? So I don't want to delve into who a sponsor is or who a client is outside the scope of this class. But you must get authorization. The person who signs off to say, yes, I am satisfied with the scope and the baselines is the project sponsor. Is the one who accepts the outcome and deliverables of a project or who has the power to reject them. That is the person that should authorize you to start. So that's why you need to give yourself boundaries as, okay, I am doing X, Y, Z over 3 weeks and at 10 million naira. Your sponsor should be able to say, yes, I am satisfied with X, Y, Z to be done over 3 weeks. If not, you can say, no, I don't have 3 weeks, do it 2.5 weeks. Or, okay, I don't have this, your 10 million over 3 weeks, do it over 6 months. Let me spread the 10 million over 6 months. So that is what happens in the initiation phase, right? So another thing, the next phase is the planning phase. This is where you now refine your objectives. When I say refining objectives here, remember I told us one of the attributes of a project is that it must have a set of interrelated activities. So you must take the pain with your team to sit down and refine objectives. The sponsor or your client is not interested in knowing the nitty-gritty of the work, or they're not interested in getting their hands dirty with the details. So you give them something high level to say you are going to get, for example, a 3-bedroom flat that has the walls created and has POP ceiling, and you can show them your drawing, you can show them a 3D, you can show them all of that. But you need to sit down now and say, to achieve this thing I've shown my client, week 1, what should we do? Week 2, what do we do? Month 1, what would we have achieved? Month 2, what would we have achieved? What are the course of actions? What are our baselines? Sometimes you may need to be going back to the client and say, I have refined this thing I say we'll do. We have to adjust this. Then you get authorization again from the initiation phase. That's why it's a cycle, because you need to keep going round and round. Then you come back to identify the milestones. The reason why I like to encourage project managers to have milestones is this. When you finish your foundation or something, you need to step back and say, oh, does it meet the requirement? So you have major milestones. You identify the risk of the project. For example, Nigerian election, when it was happening, we had to soft pedal on some certain things and say, no, let's wait for the next government to be sworn in. For example, we had a project was supposed to start in Ekiti last year. Mr. Sukomi is here. He was one of those who went to Ekiti together for that project. Then all of a sudden, we now say, should we deploy resources? Then somebody now advised us, Ekiti election is coming up. I think it was in 2 months' time then. So we have to count our risk and say, if we put our money, what if the new government decide that they don't want anything around that, area? So we have to sort that. Guess what? When the new government comes, they close everything as if we didn't even exist. So what if we are deployed our resources? So it is at this planning stage, you look at the risk. Rainfall, I talked about rainfall the other time. If you are building a similar project during dry season and you are doing it during rainy season, it's not the same thing. I'm sure even for filmmaking, it may not be the same thing. Then it is at this point you identify your stakeholders, those who matter. So now that I'm talking of stakeholders now, you already have an idea who a stakeholder is. You ask yourself, who will my project affect? Then who can affect my project? The authorities that can affect your project, you identify them at the planning stage. Then you ask yourself, what do we do to make sure that this person does not affect our project negatively? You sort all that out. Then you decide on the tools and techniques. Now, tools, MS Project is a tool. Techniques can be your templates. For example, how do you pay off a contractor? You decide it here. Is there going to be a job completion certificate? You decide it here. What does the accountant see before making payment? You decide it here. What are your SOPs? SOPs are standard operating procedures. You mention it here. Do you need to map some processes? These are the places you do all of that, right? Now, after that, there is the execution phase. Execution is the doing stage. All the works that you have defined in your plan to do, this is where you begin to do them. Number two, all the deliverables you have promised your clients, this is where you begin to create those deliverables if it's a product. This is where you coordinate team. This is where you allocate resources. The resources you budgeted for, you begin to allocate them here. This is where you monitor. I told us that time the project manager does not just plan work and tell them to start doing the work. You need to be monitoring, you need to be controlling. This is where you generate reports. MS Project can help you generate reports. We'll get there on the third day. You generate reports weekly, and now it is weekly reports or monthly report, as the case may be, or as your client may demand, that will determine whether you are working according to baseline or whether you have lost control of the project. This is where you manage your risk, and this is where you document lessons learned. Who can tell me where, I've mentioned before, where will lessons learned, where will it be documented? You can use the chat box. Where do you document lessons learned?
In the issue log.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Adeji. So your lessons learned, you make sure your issue log is binary. So it is during the execution phase that you continued. So the execution phase is linked with the next phase of work, which is the monitoring and controlling, or the review. You need to check your work against baseline. You need to measure and track your performance. If not, you can use 18 weeks to do the work you plan to do for 3 weeks when the entire project is supposed to last 18 weeks. So you need to track performance. Then you need to regulate. When I say regulate, I'm going to be teaching us something tomorrow about fast tracking and crashing. You need to be able to know when to how do I put it now? When to fast track your project. That's when to compress your schedule. Yes. You may have your client coming. I gave in my last training, I gave an example of a client I was working for that was expecting his family home after a long time in the US in December, and they planned to arrive something around 17th, 18th of December, only for him to call me. I was supposed to deliver the project just a few days before only for him to call me that plan has changed. They're arriving on the 1st. So I needed to deliver the project ending of November. What do I need to do? I need to begin to regulate. I need to begin to compress my schedule. I'm going to be teaching us compression techniques, in the course of this session. Then, of course, closing phase. I've told us that you must have closeout meetings. Closeout meetings is done at your closing phase. You finalize activity. You can do formal closure, report. You can do acceptance of deliverables. Then, of course, handing over to your clients. All of that is done, at this phase, right? Let me show us something briefly, and I will begin to round up my slide and then take a bit of questions. So let me show us something that will summarize everything I just said now. Can you see my screen yet? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen, sir.
No,
No,
I
okay.
cannot see anything now.
Okay.
Yes, we can see it now.
What can you see?
Initiating process group.
Good. So this is, I'm trying to just summarize, what I just said. Now, it is also called initiating process group. You define the new projects and then you obtain authorization. So we've seen this. I want to just take us to closing. There's something I want to show us, monitoring and controlling. Now, let me say something about this stage, right? I say that you identify areas that requires change and initiate corresponding change. Now, don't manage a project without forming during your planning stage. Create a document that you call a change request. There must be a change request project. What it means is nobody should add or remove from your scope without you documenting it in your change request log. So I've talked about issue log. Another major and very important monitoring tool is what we call the change request log. The change must be documented. For example, foundation was supposed to be 3 courses in the design. When you go to site, because of the nature of the ground, you want to change it to 2 courses. Don't just go ahead and change it. You know why? Every change made will affect your time and your costs. So that you won't have issue where your client, it will become an issue of distrust. Now, one of the things that have kept me very, very, how do I call it? I've had a lot of referrals from clients is because I am always very open. Some of my colleagues have told me in the past that you are too transparent. I say no. It reduces the chances of ambiguity. If I change my foundation from 3 courses to 2 courses or 2 courses to 4 courses, I will document the date, I will document the reason. Then I will take it to the client or the sponsor and say, this is a change we're about making. It is not what it is in the design or the plan. In case you come to site and you see this is why we are doing this. Now, I will create a column that I will say, impact on cost. I will say it. Has it reduced your budget? Has it increased your budget? Did I save money for the client by that change, or am I increasing the money? I will write it there. The impact on schedule, that's my time. I will write it there. Is it adding 1 or 2 more days to my work? Or is it reducing 1 or 2 more days to my work? I will write it there. Then I will take it to the client. I say, could you please help me sign here that you are aware that I have made these changes? It's a practice that I do, and I want us to imbibe it. It helps you a lot. If you have a lot of, right now, you don't need to do these things on paper. It can be on system, right? Google Sheet has made things very easy. If you don't have to use Google Sheet, it's a tool and a skill that you need. Remember, I told you that project management is application of not just the knowledge in the field, but tools and then skills. So the skill of spreadsheet, Google Sheet, Google Doc, it helps you collaborate so that you can be making changes here. Your client will be seeing it anywhere he is, anywhere in the world. And he can sign. And as he's signing, you are seeing it immediately. So one of these days, outside this class, I'm going to organize a free training. It's going to be free. So I will publicize and I'll let all of us know on how you can use Google Sheet to manage your project. I will do that. It's going to be one of my free training sessions. I will do it. If I don't do it as a formal class, I will do it on my YouTube series and upload it and share the link with you. So if you are able to do this, your client is aware. When it comes to take over a project, it won't miss surprises and they won't think that you are not straightforward or faithful or accountable or that you are not a good steward. So I thought I should mention that. I did it somewhere. Then closing, of course, I've talked about this. So let me talk about when does a project manager need to close a project. When should a project manager tell himself that, yes, this project is supposed to be closing now? When should a project manager do that? Okay, so project life cycle. Now, when does a project manager begin project closure activities? Number one, project ends when the objective of a project has been achieved. Remember, I say a project is a temporary endeavor that has a unique product or service to deliver in order to achieve specific objectives. So when project objectives have been met, the project comes to an end. The project manager can begin project closure activities. Number two, a project can come to an end or can be terminated when you discover that due to some major macro environments like government policies and economic and political reasons, you can no longer achieve the objective of your project. Don't waste the client's money. Call the client and say, CEO, because of these announcements that the FCT minister have made, or the finance minister has just introduced a policy, I won't lie you, this is your project. We say 10 million a bit, you end up spending 50 million. No. Can I advise you, let's just stop this thing, because we are importing everything for this project. Dollar has left maybe 500 to 1,000. So it's a reason for a project manager. So you must not, because the thing is this, a project fails when you have not met the baseline of the project, or when the baseline, when you deliver the product, but the baselines were, if you deliver a project of 5 million for 20 million, you have failed as a project manager, especially when it didn't go through proper project, acceptance process. If it goes through proper documentation, there is what we call review of baseline, where you can review your baseline and then your baseline is now reviewed. When your baseline is reviewed, fine. But if your baseline is not reviewed and you finish a project of 5 million with 20 million, it's a failure. It's a poor project. I've been there. That's why I can tell you that. Then there's sometimes that the need of a project will no longer exist. You start something and then the need no longer exists. You terminate it. Then sometimes your clients can just walk up to you and say, I'm not interested again. What do? You terminate project. Now, why I'm bringing this slide on is because if you watch, my topic say, when does the project manager start project closure activities? Whether you have finished the project or not, if they say you should terminate the project, you must do your closure activities, which includes what? Bringing out the issue log and then going through it. What were the major challenges, including the reason why you were asked to terminate? Put it down, so that when you have similar project next time, you can analyze your risk properly, and it gives you more chances of success on your project, right? All right. So I think I will want to stop here today, so that we will not, if there are no questions, I will introduce us to estimation. This class is supposed to end by 6:30. I will introduce us to estimation, but tomorrow is pure estimation techniques. So, but let me take a bit of question and answer, right? If you have any question for me, I'll talk about all this tomorrow. Okay, let me just talk about when you know that a project has failed, then I'll take question and answer. Why do projects fail, right? Most projects fail for 3 reasons. I have classified them into 2 or 3 reasons. Number one, negligence on the part of the project manager and his team can cause project failure. Number 2, skills gap can cause project failure. Right now, you are getting some skills, how to use MS Project tools. I've talked about Google Sheet skill. If you have skill gap, you can what? The project will fail. What do I mean by project manager's negligence? Some project manager will set out everybody, sure, most people set out to do great projects, right? And what do? They can promise deadline that can never be met. If your client comes to you, for example, and say, I want this done. Sorry, I want to unshare my screen and show you a bit on the board. Can you see the board? Can you see the board?
Yes, you can see the board.
Yes, sir.
Good. Your project manager comes to you. Let me use Mr. Wesley's project here. If your project, you have done your calculation, Mr. Wesley, and for the type of house that your clients say you should deliver, you have done with your team, and you've seen. I will talk more about it tomorrow. This is just high level, and you have done with your team and discovered that 3 + 3 + 1, 7 + 3, 10 + 1, 11. You need 11 weeks, right? Which is about maybe 2 months to get this project to. Maybe you are delivering a carcass for the person or a semi-finished house. The person wants a semi-finished house. I've had clients that will tell you, no, just give me a semi-finished house because I know you're a professional. Give me a semi-finished house. It's cheaper for you to give me a semi-finished house. I'm going to import the person that will do the finishes for me. I've had people like this. And you tell the person, okay, I'm doing it in 11 weeks. And your client comes and tells you, no, I want it in 6 weeks. And Mr. Wesley sat with his team and say, foundation, this foundation, I will dig in 2 days. After foundation, I will do the concrete footing of the foundation in 1 day, for example. After that, I will do block work in foundation. We have calculated 4 days. After that, you discover that maybe where you are doing your foundation, maybe water, there is water coming from the ground, for example. And you know that this your foundation, you need to do weak concrete. Weak concrete simply means you fill your block hole, for example, with weak concrete. Or you want to do weak holes in your foundation. And you know that you need additional 2 days to do this. You have scheduled it. Remember, I told you need to break each of your work into activities, right? To correctly estimate. Then after this, you know that, okay, you need to compact your laterite. Now, because you have weak holes, for example, you don't want to just pour laterite at once. You want to compact in maybe layers of maybe 300 mm. You need to compact laterite. You need to compact laterite. Compact in what? In 3 layers. If you can't see my writing very well, you can hear me, so just follow me. Maybe you need like 4 days, for example, for your laborers to do it in layers. The reason why you want them to be in layers, because you want it to be properly compacted so that, what do I call it now? So that you don't have uneven settlement or your laterite filling does not cave in. There won't be air or holes within your laterite. You compact it, you need 4 days for that. Then you want to now do hardcore. Hardcore, maybe 1 day. Let's assume you can do it in 1 day. You have ordered your hardcore is on ground. Then let's even assume before your hardcore, your plumber comes and tell you, because of the nature of X, Y, Z, blah, 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 let me do my piping before hardcore. And the plumber tells you, I need 2 days. So you are doing plumbing in foundation 2 days. Then before you come and cast your DPC, what we call German for floor, right? Maybe you can use 1 day for that. Maybe you aggregated all these things. You discover that you can't do less than 3 weeks in foundation. You need to go back to your clients and tell him that, sir, this thing is not possible in 7 weeks unless you work low quality work. That's why I have that slide there. Let me go back. That's why I have it there that never promise a deadline that can never be met. If as a professional you have done your analysis, you need to let your client know that this your foundation must go through this process. So the reason why projects fail is because, or they are prone to failure, is because project manager overpromise and underdeliver, right? So never promise a deadline that cannot be met. However, I'm going to teach you how to meet up deadline. You can compress schedules realistically, right? Now, Some project managers or team, they add more work to the scope and make drastic changes that does not pass through proper measure without regard to budget and time constraints. It is not on the WBS. It is not part of the project. No. Now, WBS is work breakdown structure. I will teach that tomorrow. WBS is work breakdown structure. So there's a popular slogan. If it's not on the WBS, it is not part of your project. WBS simply means breaking down your work into small measurable activity or task, right? That can culminate or add up together to form the major project, right? So if you don't have it listed down, then it is not part of your project, and do not add it to the project. Now, anything that is not on your list, you will agree with me that you can't measure projects. You can't measure the progress because it is not on your baseline. So you can't measure progress against what is not in your baseline. Then most times when project managers mobilize to start, they keep all the plans aside that they have and just start working from their head. So it makes your project pro. Then of course, skill gap, unclear goals, inadequate time frame, you understand, poorly managed stakeholders' expectation. You don't have people's skill. You have problem as a project manager. Tomorrow, if I have a bit of time, I'll tell us some major skills that project managers must have for you to be able to manage a project well. Inadequate risk management is, of course, another cause of project failure. Then automating inefficient processes. Now, do you know what I mean by automating inefficient process? You have automated. It's good to know how to use MS Project and use Google Sheet and create an SOP, standard operating procedure. But if there's a deficiency in any process, once you deploy it to your project, it is a multiplication of inefficiencies. So when you automate a process that is not efficient, you are multiplying the failure, gaps. Then what is the result? Your project drags on ending, that's failure. You wonder what's going on, project becomes late, client cuts losses, terminates the project, and then the project is failed. Any question for me today? Question, comment, or one or two things you like is your expectation and you want me to talk about tomorrow or before the end of this class, you can quickly drop it for me in the chat box or you ask it now.
Good evening once again. I have a question. Should I call it a question? I want to ask. I don't know. See, MS projects alone that can be used for project management, or there are other softwares.
Okay. Now, it is not only MS projects. There are other softwares. But like I said in one of my posts, right? MS Project is about one of the most popular and easy to use. And because it comes from Microsoft, it is how do I put it now? It has, yes, compatibility. It's compatible. For example, when we begin to generate cash flows on the last day, you discover that MS Project is compatible with Microsoft Excel. You can copy from Word to it. You can how do I call it? It's flexible. Now, those of us who are architects here, like architect Oracle, you will discover that there are a lot of architectural softwares. But AutoCAD, why do you think AutoCAD is the most popular? For me, I think it's because of flexibility, right? I think it's because of flexibility that makes AutoCAD more popular. But we have other one like Revit architecture. I use Revit architecture, but of course, it is not as flexible and compatible as what do we call it? As compatible as AutoCAD. The same way MS Project is more compatible. Can you see the board? Can you see the board? Can you see the board? Can you confirm if you can see the board?
Yes, we can see the board.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We have other ones like Jira, we have Trello, we have Primavera. Now, Primavera is more of program management. Program. There's what we call program management. There's what we call portfolio management. If I have time and it's not 6:30, I'll differentiate between program management, portfolio management, and project management. Then we even have operations management. But what I'm dealing with is project management. So some of these jobs, some of these other software, they are more complex and they are not as easy to use as MS Project. Now, Revit architecture can both do my drawing for me as I am doing my floor plan. By the time I am done designing my house, my 3D is ready for Revit architecture. But for AutoCAD, I will need to go and start modeling after I finish my 2D. Do you understand? So, but it's easier and to learn and more compatible, right? Right now, project management, MS Project has the largest market share. Things like Trello has just maybe like 5% market share. Jira is the closest to MS Project with 19.5%, right? But so MS Project is more widely acceptable, easy to use. Then most organizations use it. If you walk into any system, there's somebody who told me he's not here. Oh, he's not in the class. Mr. Ini is not in the class. Okay. I think he wanted to install MS. Okay, yes. Okay, whoa, wow. You were not here when we introduced ourselves. Welcome to class, sir. So he wanted to install MS Project. I could just tell him that, okay, go to either Jumia, Konga, or you can walk into Zone 5 or any computer village and you pay them to install it for you, right? That's because it's wide. You can buy MS Project on Jumia. You can buy it on Konga. You understand? You can just walk to any place. So it's a wider acceptance and it's easier to use and it's more compatible with other software. But you have other things like Jira, Trello, Primavera, right? In my last training, there's somebody who talked about Primavera. I promise I'm going to do a training on Primavera, but for now, I don't have the interest as much as I have for Microsoft projects, right? So that answers that. Do I have any other question, or I can quickly differentiate between project management, program management, portfolio management, operation management? If I don't have the time today, I will do that tomorrow before I start, I promise. But let me take more questions. Don't worry if it looks a bit easy today. By tomorrow, I will start linking everything I've talked about today. You'll begin to see the practical application from my tomorrow's class. So if you are not getting it the way you wanted to get it, don't worry so much, right? So great. Any other question?
Yes, sir. I have questions, sir.
All right, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Is there any other way we can download MS Project without going through maybe someone to download it for us? Is there anywhere we can actually do it ourselves?
Okay, now let me tell you something, right? As a project manager, those of us that have asked me about taking the PMP exam, right? There is what we call code of conduct that we sign as a professional practitioner. You are not supposed to use you will be how do I call it? You will be stealing from the IT industry if you don't buy your software through the proper means. For example, AutoCAD, for example, there were times that architects and Autodesk, Architects Association and Autodesk partnered to close down some firms in Abuja here who were not using authorized Autodesk. You can actually go to Computer Village for 1,000. They will install AutoCAD for you and crack. but it's not, it's against practice. So what I do is that even when you buy on Jumia, what they will sell to you is a key. So to answer your project, right? To answer your project, right, you can actually download, but please don't crack. Buy an authorized key from an authorized dealer. But why will you want to download when the last time I downloaded, it ate 4 gig of my data? I have one right now on my system that is downloaded, but it's 3.99 gigabytes. But if you install it to a certain point, it will ask you to subscribe and buy a key. Usually, if you convert it to Naira now, the last time I bought, it was just about 15,000, and it was 3 users. 15,000 for 3 users. After 1 year, you buy another one. It's not very expensive. So you can actually download, but please don't crack it. If you go to Computer Village, they can crack it for you for free, and you just give them 500, 1,000. But it is not best practice, and it's against the ethics of project management. So if you actually take project management and you become a PMP, you sign some code of conduct and ethics that guides your operation. So for those of us who wants to become PMPs, just take note of that. It's called to responsibility. So some of these things I'm going to be sharing with us, like having my change request process, going to my client to make sure we sign off on things before we make changes. Those are some of the ethics that keeps you, that makes you an ethical professional. You keep to the ethics and people trust you more, right? So that's my answer to that. Yes, you can download, but please do not crack. Get a license key. Any other question?
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Yes, sir. My second question is that these are project management. Like, how many years or how many months does it take to be a satisfied project manager?
If you want to do,
and what's the cost?
What's the cost implication?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know what? I'll pen that down. I'll give you a step-by-step process to become a globally certified project manager from PMI, Project Management Institute. I'll do it on the last day of our class. Just give me a reminder if I forget, but I'll pen it down now to tell you. But for now, I think I can give you an idea. I will not advise you to prepare for it in less than 3 to 6 months. Do not rush it. In less than 3 to 6 months. And then you will need 35 contact hour with. There are centers, like I started by saying, that if you want to write JAM or you want to write ICANN, you can, even if you are the best accountant in the world, if you do not go to an ICANN center where they will teach you the secrets. Every exam has its own secrets. So what I teach, I don't teach you to go and cram and pass exam and have a certificate that you are PMP. I try to bring practicality into it, what I have done on site practical. But what those PMP centers will do for you, the training, it will be specific towards how to answer PMP question and become PMP satisfied. It will actually teach you the secrets of passing the exams, right? So those one will require 35 contact hours. So you must prove to PMI, upload it that you sat under a project management training and that you have attained 35 contact hours. It can be cumulative, it can be at a stretch. So 35 contact hours is the first requirement. Then another requirement is there is a certain number of hours you must have spent on a project site. I can't remember it now, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, depending on your level. So even if you are a secondary school person can actually become a PMP, but you would have required to have spent longer years practicing on a project site. It must not be a construction site. It can be a filmmaking site. It can be other projects, anything that has a starting and end date. It can be a business management person and you can become a PMP. So there is that requirement. I will get it for you. Then the cost is about $555 from the last time I checked. So right now, if I'm to convert it to Naira, if you want to become PMP certified today, you should be keeping between 400 and 500K aside. Then prepare yourself between 3 to 6 months. The exams is usually, if they have not changed it, I wrote it in 2016, so they may have changed it. The exam is usually, I think, 200 questions in 4 hours. 200 questions in 4 hours. The pass mark is over 80. So if you get 79.99 and the pass mark is 80, you will rewrite the exam. If you rewrite it 3 times, they will bar you from writing it for another 3 years. You go back and practice again and come and register again and rewrite it again. If you get 79.99, you will not be given a credential. So I will talk a little bit about becoming a certified project manager, on the last day. So I'm 2 minutes behind schedule now. If there's not any other questions, we will call it a day. And I want to encourage you to just, I'll share my slide today. I can't promise uploading this video today. It will depend on the size, but I'll try and share my slide today so that we'll get prepared for tomorrow's class. And I'm sure we're going to get a little bit of clarity in tomorrow's class. If I have your permission to close the class, can you just maybe put your hand up, emoji, or you unmute yourself and say good to go?
Good to go. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you
very much.
Yes, Mr.
Good to go. God bless you.
Yeah, Mr. Ini, I didn't observe when you walked in. Hope you didn't miss much of the class.
No, I didn't. I came in, I think, around 4:30, but I was listening and I was driving at the same time.
Okay. All right, great. All right. So thank you, everybody. See you in the next class. I will post. Please relate on the WhatsApp group. I will want to post something that you can do for me as an assignment. If I'm not able to, don't worry. When we come tomorrow, we can do the assignment in class. All right. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Have a good evening too. You're wonderful.
Thank you, sir. God bless you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye, sir.
Yeah.